Hi, I'm John Davidson. You're watching Truth Be Told. Todd Callender is out. The following interview you're about to hear was pre-recorded with a man named James Files and his wife, author Pamela Ray. James claims to have assassinated John F. Kennedy instead of Lee Harvey Oswald. While we've heard many claims about this is my first interview with James. With the information potentially coming from upcoming investigations into the assassination of John F. Kennedy, what James says right now may be more relevant than ever. Please enjoy the show.
With Truth Be Told audio today, I'm John Davidson hosting for Todd Callender, and today we have a gentleman named James Files, who is, well, James, I think it's best let you describe a little bit of your history, but it involves the John F. Kennedy assassination, correct?
Correct.
So, James, can you give me sort of a top-line background of who you are and why you're coming forward today?
Well, okay, first I was 82nd Airborne. It was 122nd, and I knew a lot of people along the way. George Bush and I were friends. But I was one of the first ones with Luis Posada Corrales. We was recruited for Operation Group 40. My family at the time knew me as a Chicago gangster, out crime and everything. Nobody knew about my CIA connections. And for 28 years, I was an asset for the CIA.
And by asset, would you say that you were involved in actual
assassinations and everything else like that? Black Ops.
Now, did you operate domestically or exclusively internationally?
Domestically and international.
Which is, technically, that's a violation of the CIA's mandate, correct?
They don't have no violations. I mean, they don't tell nobody what they're doing, and it's nobody's business, they figure, I guess. But they took when Kennedy gave his speech that he was going to smash the sea into 1,000 pieces because he was mad at us because we went around him to do a job overseas that he said no to. CIA finally, JFK put the paperwork in to dismantle the CIA. When the paperwork hit in, they took off the gloves. They called Chicago, the lawyers did. The lawyers talked to lawyers, and then the lawyer talked to Sam Giancana and Tony Accardo, and they had the green light to go after Kennedy because they was already mad at Kennedy because they felt that he double-crossed them. And
because they got the Chicago vote for him.
We was going to hit Kennedy in Chicago, and Tony Accardo said no. We were going to hit him at Joseph's Restaurant on the Bottleneck by the Eisenhower coming into the city. And we had to move it. We found out he was going to be in Dallas, Texas. I was sent down to Dallas a week early as driver and weapons bearer only. And I learned the one-way streets, the railroad crossings, the time of the trains, and all that. So in case we had a high-speed chase, something went wrong. And it turned out I was recruited the morning of the assassination by word of General Lansdale. He had Johnny Roselli step down there, was backing Charles Nicoletti, and I was supposed to be the backup shooter. My position was on the Grassy Knoll. Charles Nicoletti and Johnny Roselli was in the Dow Tech building, second floor, corner office. And they'd be arranged to have that office 2 weeks prior, when they moved everybody out of that office, and they claimed there was remodeling and painting. They put in the painting scaffolds, and they put in tarps and everything else. And Eugene Halbrating was the one that let him into the office. He had the key, and he was the one that let him out when the assassination was over with. They went to the car, and I got in. I slid the briefcase with the Remington Fireball in it, the 221. And we drove away from there, nice and quiet. No squealing tires, none of that, no fishtailing.
Wow.
That's basically what happened that day. I was on the Grassy Knoll. A couple of people saw me. And the one woman, she ducked down in her car. She worked for the library. There's a school book depository. And she was down there having lunch. And the other one was Beverly Oliver. She was a little ways from us. She's seen me there. But the woman in the, I think it was a Dodge or a Pontiac. Don't remember which. She saw me take the shot.
So, well, I don't know how to go. That's a
And the
challenging.
one person that's up visited me behind the fence, which I wouldn't have been at the beginning because I was in prison and I thought he was still alive, was General Lansdale, Edward Lansdale. And he come by that morning and he wanted to know if everything was said. He was grounds coordinator. And I told him I was on station, everything was okay on my end. And he went by to check with Chuck and them, I guess, and
So
the rest is history.
People might find it interesting to know that Lee Harvey Oswald showed up at your motel room in Mesquite, Texas, a few days before the assassination. And why don't you tell them who told Lee Harvey Oswald to come to your motel?
David Atlee Phillips. He was the controller for Lee Harvey Oswald and for me. Back then we called them controllers. Today they call them handlers.
So Lee Harvey Oswald and James Files were working for
I knew Lee Harvey Oswald 6 months or 7 months before the assassination because I was running guns to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Lee was taking them there to New Orleans and getting them put on a ship. And we were sending their weapons to Papa Doc. And after he died, we sent weapons to Baby Doc.
In Haiti.
In Haiti, yeah.
interesting. Now, Lee was also around the spring and summer of '63 doing some research into a way to kill Castro, apparently.
Castro, that was a lie. Nobody wanted to kill Castro. We thought he was. And I didn't learn until 1977 that Castro was partners with the CIA. And they were in bed together. Because I really thought that the CIA wanted to kill Castro.
Right.
But Castro was handling it. Cuba, the islands next to Cuba, was dropped for the heroin that come out of Southeast Asia. And there was refined there and then sent to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And it went down through the Yucatan going west, so it hit the city of Mexico. And then it turned up north, and it got the name Mexican Mud. That's what the heroin was called, coming out of Mexico.
What about Jack Ruby? Was he involved in any of this?
Jack Ruby.
Tell me what you and Johnny Roselli did the morning of the assassination in Fort Worth.
Well, Jack Ruby, we went to, Johnny Roselli and me went to the Old South Pancake House and to meet Jack Ruby. And I stood at the counter and had a cup of coffee. I had a clear shot at Jack Ruby in case something went wrong. And Jack Ruby slid the envelope over a 5/8 size envelope to Johnny Roselli. And then Jack Ruby left. They talked a few minutes. I went outside and made sure the parking lot was clear. Pulled the car up to the door and got Johnny Roselli, got into the car. And I took Johnny Roselli back to the Dallas Cabana. I waited a few minutes and I picked up Charles Nicoletti.
What was in that envelope that Jack Ruby gave to you and Johnny Roselli?
It was the last minute change, and it's true they printed the route down Main Street a week in advance in the newspaper. But the last minute change was going down L Street, which was changed over that morning.
Oh.
To slow the car down.
And there was Secret Service identification, right?
Yeah.
The people that weren't in Secret Service were going to use to turn people away from where you were shooting from up on the Grassy Knoll.
Right.
So was the Secret Service involved?
How deeply, I do not know.
Because there's a lot of stuff that floats around that the driver of the car turned around and shot. Which
no way.
Well, he would have needed a very long arm if he'd have reached around and shot Kennedy.
Yeah,
in the right tempo.
That one seems a little
his arm
too
was
obvious.
At least 12 foot.
But also, there's a story that there was another shooter in the gutter, aiming up.
Uh-huh.
They claimed Johnny Roselli was in the gutter, and Johnny Roselli was not in the gutter. And a shot from the gutter would have been almost impossible.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a weird angle.
Mhm.
Then let's see. There's also there's a movie called "Everything Was a Rich Man's Trick." Have you heard of it?
No, I've never heard of it.
It covers a lot of that there were multiple targets on goal that day. I think 5 or 6 different shooters in position just in case one missed.
Well, here's the one thing. If there had been that many shooters, they wouldn't be considered shooters because they couldn't even hit the limo, let alone the target inside.
Right.
They shot the signpost, they shot this curve, they shot the sidewalk, they shot the grass, they shot the street. I mean, these are the worst shooters in the world as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And the weapon that you fired was a single shot bolt action Remington 221. And
It's a bolt action pistol.
And you always say that if you would have needed more than one shot, you were the wrong person for the job because a good shooter only needs one shot.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
and a real shooter never takes a shot on a guess. He only takes a shot when he is sure he has a kill shot.
So who took the first shot?
Charles Nicoletti.
Okay.
From the Dowtech building from the 2nd floor.
And
corner office.
And you took the second shot.
The final shot.
Okay.
It hit him in the right temple.
How do you feel about that, James?
Well, at the time I felt it was a job well done. But after I got to thinking about it and years time went by, I feel sorry for the kids that had to grow up without a father. And several other things that feel bad about it, but I don't know the big picture. The government sent me there. Well, actually, the mob sent me there. And I was an asset. And as the records have been leased, the records show there was a mafia hitman there and / CIA asset. So,
and you're that
I figured they was referring to Chuck and me.
Okay. Now, apparently there are photographs of George Bush outside the hospital.
No, I didn't know about outside the hospital. But he was outside the book depository.
Well, I mean, after when they took the Kennedy's body to the hospital, there's I believe a picture of George Bush outside of it with a group of men.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's also in this "Everything Is a Rich Man's Trick" movie. But there's a quote that they used, and they said that when I'm paraphrasing here, but when George Bush found out that there were photographs of him outside the hospital, the quote is, "He grew assholes all over his body and shit himself to death."
Mm-hmm.
Which is...
I heard that was in Daniel Hopsicker's book, Burying the Boys. I heard that was when he found out that he was in that training film that Lee Harvey Oswald was in at the Lake Pontchartrain over there in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. That's when I heard that whole, pooping himself to death happened.
Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I'll have to double check, but I believe it was about George Bush because...
Yeah, he's known for saying that or for that being said about him, but I'm pretty sure it was in Daniel Hopsicker's book, Burying the Boys.
So George Bush was in the video with Lee Harvey Oswald?
Yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald, me, Frank Sturgis, Jerry Hemmings, and I can't remember all the guys. There's a bunch of us in the back of a deuce and a half. I think there's about 14 or 15 of us all together. We rolled out of the deuce and a half, hit the ground, took perimeter, and we're pointing our guns at the perimeter. We're making a training film, but every one of us is looking back at the camera.
And that film ended up being the main target for the Watergate break-in rather than anything else. And that's why Jim always says there's Watergate 1, Watergate 2, because just imagine George Bush Sr.'s career if there would have been a film coming out in the early 70s with him and Lee Harvey Oswald on the same training film up in Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana. That wouldn't have, his whole career would have been probably over at that point.
James, how do you feel about George Bush being the president after this?
Well, afterwards, I liked George Bush. My wife doesn't like him, but I liked him. But George Bush come down to Little Havana there outside of Miami and told us all, shook our hands and everything. And I know him way before that when he was just a recruiter for the CIA. But when he made director, deputy director, whatever it was, he told us no matter where we was at in the world, if we could be moved by airplane, we would have it in 48 hours at our disposal. And he kept his word and he backed us all up on that.
Well, I mean, if he was
As far
involved,
as I'm concerned, George Bush was good.
except for the fact that he murdered our, if this is all, I'm not saying I don't believe you or I do believe you. What I'm saying is I wasn't there, so I just have to take your information and
Right.
ask questions. So, if George Bush was involved in the assassination of a duly elected president of the United States, I don't know if I think that's a good guy.
I wouldn't say he was involved in it. I would say he knew about it.
But he worked in the CIA, so he was okay with it.
He was a recruiter. He was a recruiter, yeah. At the time of the assassination.
Have you?
James Files' direct handler, controller was David Atlee Phillips, who I'm sure was close with George Bush Sr. Because later on, when there was other murders and mayhem in our country, Washington, D.C., that guy from Chile, Orlando Lettier, and George Bush Sr. was the president. Or no, he wasn't president. He was the director of CIA when that was going on. Car bombs going off in Embassy Row over there in Washington, D.C. I think it was 1976. Wasn't that it?
77.
77. And then the Cuban airliner, they used the same explosives to blow up that Cuban airliner and the guy's car in Washington, D.C. It's just, yeah, he was Operation Group 40 and their worldwide assassination, cross-border assassination groups. And that's James Files and Luis Posada Carrillas were the first two that George Bush Sr. recruited into Operation Group 40. I've asked him before if the JFK hit was an Operation Group 40 hit. And he says, no. But it seems like the ones that were there observing the assassination go down, there were other members of Operation Group 40 there. So he doesn't want to admit that, but I just kind of put it all together.
Have you seen Oliver Stone's movie JFK? I assume that you probably did.
No, I didn't watch it. My wife did.
There's a deleted scene that they had where Jack Ruby was in prison and he was given an injection that gave him essentially a rapid onset cancer that killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what they were working on. They were working on a fast-acting cancer, and not to bring up a sore subject, but that Mary Sherman down in New Orleans, and David Ferry and this lady Judith Baker, they were there.
Yes.
Doing that experimentation to create a weaponized cancer that was fast-acting. So it isn't, in my opinion, beyond the realm of possibility that Jack Ruby was injected with fast-acting cancer, because they were specifically working on those types of things to make people die like that.
Correct. Yeah, I've been investigating some of that too, and part of what they were using was this little virus called SV40. And they've now found parts of that in the Pfizer COVID vaccine. So that's fun.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah. Let's keep using this horrible thing. So going back, I mean, I was born after JFK's assassination. But we all live in this world that exists now in the wake of it. Why are you? I mean, how long have you been trying to tell this story?
30 years and counting, right? For this Confession of an Assassin video came out. That was filmed in 1994 in Stateville Prison. His first Confession of Assassin video.
Gotcha. Now,
I was in Stateville Prison, and I was writing a book called To Kill a Country. And the CIA wanted to edit the book, and I wouldn't let them. And so me and the CIA, we had problems between us at that point.
Well, what really got this thing going was FBI agent Zach Sheldon gave Joe West a tip that there was a man in prison that knew about the JFK assassination, and Joe West, who wanted to open up a court case in Dallas, Texas County to exhume JFK's body to prove there was a conspiracy, to prove that there were, more than one shooter, more than one direction. And so Joe West was the one that contacted James Files and wanted him to open up and talk about this story. He was content to live in prison and die in prison and just never talk about the JFK assassination. Joe West is the one that came to the prison and visited him. The letters that Joe West wrote to initially try to get James Files to talk about this, they're all included in the back part of our book, Primary Target, JFK, How the CIA Used the Chicago Mob to Kill the President, which is our third book. I wrote 2 books when he was in prison, To Kill a Country, and Interviewed History, the JFK assassination. And this one was written once he got out of prison in 2016. And then I came over from Hawaii to Illinois in 2017. And I told him, look, we need to get this thing done and put out there the right way. Instead of all these hindrances with you in prison and me in Hawaii, let's put this out right. He really didn't even want to do it again. He's like, no, I'm done with the JFK. So I'm the one that persisted and said, no, we need to get this Primary Target book, JFK, out. In it, his whole story from Chicago to Dallas, his debriefing at the CIA hangar at Midway Airport in outskirts of Chicago there. The question and answers that people are always asking him, if all this is real, how come you're still alive? And what happened to the gun? And who killed Tippit if Oswald didn't do it? And just all the questions, all those are in our book. And then there's a cast of characters that gives way more information about James Files that has never been put out before. And then about his early life as a Navy birthing program person that was created to be a super soldier down at Camp Hero. They created him in Mobile, Alabama. His mom sent him to Camp Hero in New York, Montauk Island. Anyway, the cast of characters is in there. A lot of people besides James Files that were involved in this whole situation. Joe West letters, Joe West court case are in the appendix too. So there's so much information in this book that we just put out in 2020 is when it got published. People read it and then they reread it. They read it like 3 or 4 times just because there's so much information in there. It's hard to even process it all because it's like a reference book to have this much information, true history about the JFK assassination. He didn't want to put it out. I said, we're doing it. And then I put information in there about the Burying the Boys Association with James Files, more information about George Bush. So it's a lot to even talk about on, one interview that's going to be maybe an hour long. People, if they want the full complete story and have a copy of it, they can get it through Author House or they can get it through our website. But if they get it through us, it's going to be a signed book. But if they get it through Author House, it'll be, just they'll send it to them without the signature in it. So that's what's going on with how long it's been going on. But 1994 is when Confession of an Assassin was first taped there at Stateville Prison. I saw that video in 1998, wrote James Files a letter in 1999 and said, hey, thanks for telling the American people the truth. I just wrote, and at the end of the video, he was asked, James Files, you've been around death, violence, killing, murder your whole life. Do you believe in God? And he said, oh, I guess so. Found myself praying to him on several occasions. But that comment is what made me write my first letter to say, thank you for telling us the truth, because I wanted to help him understand who God is, maybe help him understand, the Bible, that Jesus is our Lord. But that's the only reason I wrote to him. Right, Jimmy?
Right.
I had no alternate agenda. I did not. And when in the visiting room, when he asked me, first of all, if I ever get out of prison, will you marry me? Didn't think he would. So I said, yes. And then he gets up off his bended knee and he says, well, now that I can trust you, I want you to write this book, To Kill a Country, with me. That started the whole 9 yards with that whole situation. But when he first asked me, I was like, are you talking to me? You want me to write a book? What? I mean, and about that? killing countries? Why me? Because what? You said I had a way with words?
Yeah.
And he thought,
Yeah, we were working, so you could explain things a lot better than I could.
the people know what really
And
happened.
the first book wasn't necessarily about Kennedy. The first book was To Kill a Country was about Chile and overthrowing the government there and taking Allende out of power and putting Pinochet into power and ending not a good government, but a decent government that instilled the worst regime that country had ever seen.
And what he had done is started the book with different sections, and he was going to make it about drug running in Southeast Asia as well, besides just going over, taking over countries, the CIA, death squads and all that. And I said, well, I mean, I think it's really important we do a little bit more about JFK, because that's what people are going to remember you about, that, you were the assassin on the Grassy Knoll. But yeah, all this other information is important. People in America get to know, what our country's really doing all over the world. And then at the end, so I made JFK the first part. Middle part was the To Kill a Country, Southeast Asia, Chile, and all that going on. And then the third part was the Illuminati conspiracy for the New World Order. And so when this book was at the publisher over there at Trying Day, I had a lot of interference trying to get this book out. And so that's a whole long story we don't want to get into, but I just ended up not going with that publisher, and then publishing, self-publishing with this other one called Author House. But it was really suppressed. Really, people did not want that book getting out to the public, but I ended up putting it out there anyway. But then it was canceled. Long story you guys don't want to hear. But then while he was still in prison, I actually put out that Interview with History book, and then this one is the Primary Target book that was put out in 2020 that I think will help answer anybody's questions about what really happened that day.
And in the back of Primary Target is an actual copy of the paraffin test given to Lee Harvey Oswald that proved he never fired a rifle that day.
It's in Joe West's court case, in the appendix for all the paperwork from his court case.
Really?
And also in my court case, the shootout with the cops and everything, that's in part of my court cases in the back of the book also.
So Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy.
Yeah.
And I've also heard that Lee was responsible for warning, I guess, the Secret Service about the Chicago or the Illinois potential assassination about 2 weeks before Dallas.
It's possible. I don't think anybody knew Chicago was coming to Dallas. They thought that we were going to do Kennedy in Chicago. And then it wound up, and I wound up there a week before the assassination. Lee Harvey Oswald was showing me around by orders of David Phillips.
Yeah, that I believe I'm recalling this correctly. Lee phoned in an anonymous tip to warn about the Chicago attack, and that I guess is part of why I got called off. But look, if the way this works is the people that he was warning... The
reason he got called off in Chicago is Tony Accardo.
Right.
He says, no, we killed the president in our backyard. He says, we're not going to make any money here anymore.
Right.
And Zach Shullen was the one that busted me for the hijacking ring. And...
they had the Armory. It's a restaurant over there in Chicago. They had it bugged. It's where Sam Giancana and Tony Accardo would meet and hang out and talk sometimes. And they had it bugged. And so the FBI knew that it was going to happen. They heard Sam bragging about it after it happened. So for the FBI to act like, oh, we never knew, we didn't know, and we never heard any rumors. They had it illegally bugged. That's why they couldn't use any of that to, try and get them for the organized crime stuff. But the FBI knew that it was going to happen, and they didn't step in to stop it. As a matter of fact, J. Edgar Hoover the night before was a guest of honor at a party at the Merchants' house. It was like a victory lap party that they were already celebrating that it was a done deal.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have confirmation from people in the Hunt family that they got skedaddled out of town, and they were really happy to know that his head was going to get blown off.
Wow.
Yeah, the Hunt family. And they're the ones that helped Charles Nicoletti and Johnny Roselli have that Eugene Hale Braden guy be able to get him the key to get him into that position for the shooting in Dealey Plaza. Just so anybody wants to know about that.
Just for our listeners, can I ask, James, what were you in prison for?
I was in prison for a shootout with the cops. But I thought the government, the CIA, sent them after me. And Pamela talked to the one cop survived. He took a round about 1 inch from the heart. And Pamela talked to him, told him that we was writing a book, and she had my story, and she wanted to know if he wanted to tell his story, which he did. And they had that discussion. She's got 2,500 hours, I guess, of book tapes and phone calls.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah, 1999 to when he got out in 2017.
2016.
Or 2016, but phone calls every week and letters 3 times a week for when he was in prison. That's a lot of communication. And we were doing all these projects with everything being done in triplicate. They record the phone calls, they record anything and everything that's going in and out of that prison. And so all our documentation about what we were writing these books about was all going through, and I'm sure they sent their copies to the CIA. And I just didn't care really. George Bush Sr. was alive most of the time that I was doing all this, and James Files said when we first started, they know we're writing a book back east and it's making them nervous. I'm like, so what? The truth's going to come out.
Why wouldn't he have just had you? I mean, why wouldn't George have you killed?
Why wouldn't he have me killed?
Or James killed in prison?
They tried.
Yeah, they tried, believe me. I had some bloody battles there.
He's a hard guy to kill.
If I went to prison, I was 51 years old, and the cops had a $50,000 contract on me. They tried to kill me. They blew it. And so I wrote the CIA a letter and told them I was very disappointed in them. I thought it's worth a hell of a lot more than $50,000, at least $250,000. And I come to find out it wasn't the agency that ordered the hit on me, that it was Hillary Clinton.
Why would Hillary want it?
Well, at that point, Bill Clinton was running for president when I went to prison. And I was one of the last people that could put them on the runway with a plane loaded of drugs.
In Mena, Arkansas, when they were doing CIA drug.
Mena, Arkansas is the drug drop capital of the world.
Why is that?
Because we get fly in and out of there and nobody bothers, and there's only one way in and one way out if you was driving.
Protected by the governor of Arkansas, which would have been Bill Clinton.
Interesting. Wow. I've heard about this Clinton death list.
Chicken trucks were used to distribute the drugs all over America. That's in the book Defrauding America by Rodney Stitch, 3rd explosive edition.
Pam, have you considered putting all of your, do you have recordings of all your phone calls with James when he was in prison?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with all that?
22.5 years in Stateville.
I have no idea what I'm going to do with all that.
Part of my sentence was at the Lake County Jail when I was on trial. My last 2 years I served at Danville Prison.
Which is a medium.
Because they had a poll on me for double homicide. And the witness against me died. And so they had to get me out of Stateville. Because the Stateville, well, less than 20 years, you couldn't be there. But they kept me there until I was down to 2.5 years, 2 years. And the state gave them 24 hours to move me out of Stateville. So they took me and down to Danville Prison in Illinois. And I served my last 2 years there.
James, is there any...
He was expected to die in prison. They were going to carry him out of one of the little Sally ports in a body bag. That's how James Files was going to leave prison. And they even had the odds in Vegas that you were going to die in prison. So people lost money when he got out.
And when did you get out?
I got out in May of 2016.
And I came to Illinois in October of 2017.
And they tried to kill me when I got out of prison.
Not fully informed of all the horrific things going on in Chicago before I got here, with them trying to kill James Files.
So now does the mob want you dead too?
I grew up inside the mob, and I believed and I lived by the rules of the La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours. The most important thing was the outfit, was the La Cosa Nostra. Second came God. Third was third and fourth was your mother and father. Fifth was your children. But nothing else was the top of the La Cosa Nostra. They were considered to be number one.
Do they still exist?
Except when you would call David Atlee Phillips, the CIA controller, every day, and if he had a job, which would mean he had somebody to have James Files go kill, then that would take precedent over anything that the Chicago mob wanted him for. And he had a pass from Sam Giancana and Tony Accardo and Charles Nicoletti. If he got a call, if he called in and, oh, David Phillips needs me today, I got to catch a plane and go do something for him. Then the Chicago outfit people say, okay, bye, see you when you get back. And he had a pass to go do his government killing when he got orders from the CIA.
I was an assassin for the CIA.
Were there any
several governments?
Were there any famous people that you killed?
No, I won't go into that. That's down south into Central Europe.
Interesting. So I don't want to forget this, Pam. You should definitely consider putting everything that you have digitally into some sort of internet archive so that people can see them in the future.
Yeah, I don't have digital recordings. They were back when you would go to Radio Shack and get those little tiny miniature tapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
the video that I watched the original Confession of Assassin on from Blockbuster, it was on VHS. I mean, we're talking, this is old school stuff.
Well, we definitely need to get them converted to digital before it's too late, because eventually tape will gum up and break and rot. Which is, so this seems like very important data to be archived.
Yeah, and there's I don't know how many notebooks of all our correspondence and our letters when we were writing To Kill a Country and then Interview with History. We were going to write a book called Darkest Covert Operations, and I thought, maybe I shouldn't do that one. Because it's, stuff that you can't even talk about. And just for the record,
signed NDAs on.
Yeah, now
for the people that don't,
non-disclosure
is non-disclosure agreement.
So yeah, I nixed that one because I don't want to know. What I do know is already pretty horrific, and the murders that I do know about are just I never shot a bird with a BB gun, so this is just we're totally opposite, right? But I thought I don't know, I want to go there, but I have a lot of letters with all that information.
2,500.
There's just notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of all, because every week he'd write me 3 letters. He'd write every day and then he'd send them 3 times a week.
Wow.
It's it's crazy. And then put a card with it and, just crazy. And then he'd usually call me on Saturday, and that the time that he could get the phone, it was 3:00 in the morning for me in Hawaii. But whatever, who cares? You get used to it. And I just didn't think he's ever going to get out. I really didn't. I was praying for him to get out and for God to use him and and any way he wanted to, but it was a full-on miracle that he ended up not spending the rest of his life in prison. You guys always well, how come you're not in prison? Well, you spent quite a few years there.
Maybe 25 total.
25 it's for the last thing, but then the federal thing with all the
7 years and 4 months.
The cars, the stealing cars and what do you call it?
Hijacking, stealing the cars, chop shops
and all that.
And transportation.
Why would the CIA let you go to prison?
Why would the CIA what?
Why did they let me go? Because when a cop gets shot, people walk away from you.
Mm.
Nobody died, though. The time that the 2 cops that were out of uniform, out of jurisdiction, and never identified themselves and started shooting at James Files and his partner, Dave Morley, it it just, Jimmy, you talk.
Nobody could believe what happened. And I went to court. They kept me chained and shackled and kept me in a jumpsuit. During my trial, that's the way I was. I was supposed to have been wearing civilian clothes.
And not being chained and shackled to the floor.
Yeah. And it took the jury 3 minutes to convict me. And they had lunch after that. So there was no saving me at that point. George Bush had got me off parole on my federal case because there was the cars and other things. And anyway, George Bush went to bat for me when he was president. And
Interesting.
this last time, the trip, nobody wanted to be next to me.
And James, how old are you now?
83.
How was your health?
Very bad.
He had a stroke in, I think it was the end of January last year. And then he fell and he hit on his left side. And then his whole left side's been kind of paralyzed and not working right. He had really bad COPD from injuries from, war injuries. And so his breathing was really bad, and he's doing a lot better as far as the breathing goes. But he's got a situation with his stomach where he can't eat very much, or else he's got to throw up, and it's just he's on a touch and go thing right now. But he's way better than he was last year, where they had to fly him from one place to another in a helicopter because it didn't have a good ICU for him to be in. He was in that for almost 2 solid weeks.
And last week at the doctor's, when I went in, supposed to have been for minor surgery, they said it was going to be major surgery, and they said I wouldn't survive it.
That's to fix his stomach situation.
So they sent me home.
But the one lady that was at the emergency room at the closer facility, she said, "Oh, it's you guys. Oh, I remember you guys. Usually the people that we see is in bad as condition that he is, and he's on a respirator and everything, going on the helicopter down to ICU. We usually never see him again." So when I went down to the ICU at the other town that had a better facility, I said, "You know what, guys? They go, 'Are you okay?' 'Yeah, I'm fine.' But the deal is, you need to do whatever it takes to keep him around, because he always comes back. The cat with 9 lives, this guy's got, way more than that going on. And if there's ever a chance where you got to decide whether to keep it plugged in or unplug it, leave it plugged in. He's coming back." So that's what happened just last year. He came back from all that.
Wow.
It's a miracle he's even still here.
And James, you were 21 at the time?
The time, yeah.
And you'd already been in the military and served?
Oh, yeah.
So they gave you
People
training.
that go look at the Vietnam Veterans Wall, they'll find out most of the kids that died in Vietnam, 50,000, was 17, 18, 19 years old, 20 years old. There's no old men. There's only a few old men listed on that wall.
And you were trained as a marksman?
As a marksman, yes.
From the age of 8 years old,
Yeah.
going to Camp Hero, he never went to regular schools. He was going to what he would tell his friends, "Well, how come you don't have to go to school?" "Oh, I go to a military school." "Oh, okay." So that just answered that question. But he was out doing stuff when the kids are in school, and he didn't have to go to regular grade school or high school.
Where did you test your gun to make sure the sight was right?
Mesquite.
Okay. And that was, I guess, right before?
It's in the pages of one of the volumes of the Warren Commission. Some woman looked out her kitchen window and she seen 2 teenagers. She said, "On the field shooting weapons. There's a junkyard out there with some old cars. And we was taking target practice. What I was doing is calibrating the scopes."
Right.
Lee Harvey Oswald never fired the weapon. He picked up the brass that expended from the weapon, and he held it in his hand, and he had paraffin gunpowder test the center of the palm of his hand where he had held the shells.
But not on his cheek or
Not his
anything like
cheek or
line up with the
back or
rifle
anything.
shot.
Nothing.
Yeah, this interview could go for about 3 years, probably.
But that's why I want people to read our book, because
Yeah.
it has so much information in it. And like I said, you can keep it around as a reference book if you ever need to, oh yeah, I'll look that up again.
We'll
Operation
definitely.
Group 40. I want to give one thing plain. Operation Group 40. Its cover story was it was an intelligence group. We gathered intelligence, but that was just another lie. We was a worldwide assassination group.
And if you committed a lot of assassinations, have you ever considered leaving a list of the targets that you had, so that at some point in the
No,
future,
I've never considered it. Might create problems.
well, their families might want to have
Yeah.
closure.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
But
But he thinks the ones that are anything associated with the Chicago outfit, that there's still potential danger there because family members might want to retaliate.
I burned the ledger and I spread the ashes over Charles Nicoletti's grave.
it's not funny. It's just it's
Like I told Chuck, well, boss, ledger finally came home. But Chuck gave it to me as a life insurance policy because he was expecting to get hit. And then day that Chuck Nicoletti got hit, that morning, George, what's his name?
DeMorge,
I can't pronounce his name. He got killed in Dallas that morning, and that night at about 10 o'clock or 10:30, Chuck got killed at the Golden Orange Restaurant in North Lake, Illinois, at North Avenue and Manhattan Road.
George DeMornschild's nickname was Oswald's babysitter, and he also knew George Bush Sr. in the oil business. And he is also familiar with all that stuff going on in Haiti. Just so you know.
Yeah.
James, what do you think about the shot taken at Donald Trump in July?
Well, I think whoever it was, their bearings is a little off there. There's a wind that they didn't break for, and they should have been an easy target.
Wasn't a real shooter.
And it was a young guy who wasn't a real shooter. He just wanted to be.
Yeah,
I don't even think it really happened. I think it was a fake thing, but he thinks it was somewhat real, but I don't think it was even real.
What's strange about it is how rapidly they let the crowd leave without interviews. I'm friends with one of the guys that was directly behind Donald Trump.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't interrogated. I mean, you can see. In fact, my friend was one of the few people that didn't duck. He thought it was some kids dropping fireworks. He was never interrogated. No one asked him any questions. He was in the stands behind Donald Trump. So it was very strange that they just let everybody go. No documenting who was there. They, within 48 hours, they were hosing the blood off the roof. They were getting rid of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
There was very little in the way of investigation. Curiously little, frankly.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's ear sure got healed pretty fast, and I didn't think bone cartilage, the ear cartilage could just grow back and look like a normal ear that never even got hurt.
Yeah, I haven't inspected his ear, so I can't say for sure how that works, but
just looking at close-up pictures on the TV not too long after it happened, I was like, oh man, they really expect us to believe that happened.
Well, again, I can't speak to it. I definitely saw that it seemed to heal pretty quick, but I don't know how much cartilage was hit or if it was just literally a tiny skin nick. The angle, if it is real, is incredible. Really, that his head, if it had been turned any direction, even a degree off, it would have taken off part of his skull.
Right.
But I believe we live in a world where miracles happen now. So, it's very possible that.
Well, you take Lee Harvey Oswald. He got shot in the basement of the Dallas jail there.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the city jail being transferred to the county jail. And never in my life have I seen anybody transferred from the city jail to the county jail in plain clothes. They always wear a jumpsuit. Mm-hmm. And he should have been wearing a jumpsuit that said Dallas City Jail, and then they would have given him a jumpsuit at the county jail that said Dallas County Jail. And I've had Pamela pull up pictures of me on the internet, and I've used magnifying glasses, and I saw no hole in the sweater that he was wearing, and he was wearing a sweater over a white shirt. It looked more like he was going on vacation than he was going to the county jail.
The fact that there was so little security, that the chaotic scene, the chaotic scene of all these people milling about while they were moving him through, it's amazing now, you know.
And what is amazing was when Jack Ruby allegedly shot Lee Harvey Oswald, none of the other officers pulled out a gun.
Right.
You would think if you heard a gunshot go up, I know the first thing I reach for is my weapon, so I can return fire if I have to.
Right. Similar
didn't.
with RFK's assassination.
I don't know. I was out of the country on that one, so I won't comment on it.
I don't think Sirhan killed Robert Kennedy.
I don't think his son either believes that either.
Yeah, I mean that security guard is the one that did it, and all the wounds match where the security guard Thane Caesar. Sirhan was like a Lee Harvey Oswald, just like convenient patsy.
Right. So when you have all of this revised history and you start looking at things and saying, okay, everything that we were told was a lie.
Much.
What do you think about 9/11?
Don't get us started on that.
I was in prison when that happened, but I watched the planes hit the towers.
Fighting to kill the country when that happened.
Yeah. And as soon as I saw the buildings come down, I told my cell partner, who was 101st Airborne, I was 82nd Airborne, he was 101st. Told Jesse, it's this building imploded. Plane didn't bring it down, it imploded. It had rig demolition inside, set to go off.
Yeah.
Now watch the other buildings fall. No plane hit the one building and it collapsed all by itself. I guess they got scared because they seen the other buildings falling. You'd figure, well,
yeah, building 7,
I
got scared and fell down all by itself. And then the Pentagon, all the discrepancies there.
Somebody pushed the wrong button.
The one shot down over Pennsylvania. I mean, we were not told the truth about 9/11.
The government has never told the truth to the American
And they're not going to tell the truth about JFK, no matter what paperwork gets pushed at whatever level. We just are convinced that the government's never going to tell on itself.
And on the back of the book, Primary Target, it's colored picture me standing over Nicoletti's grave. And it says 100 years from now, history will say that Oswald acted alone and there was no conspiracy to kill Kennedy.
What do you think about Donald Trump releasing records?
I think he released them, but they'd been touched up, and they've had plenty of time to make up their own records and their own story.
Right. Why would they
psyop? I don't think they're really trying to get to the bottom of any of this.
Why would they store evidence that implicates their responsibility?
Well, we don't know that the evidence is destroyed. It might have been destroyed by now.
Yeah. However, if this evidence comes out and it validates what you say and what others have said, what will you think of that?
Oh, there's a group of people right now that are trying to get me to testify before Congress. I'm not able to travel to Washington, D.C. I told them they had to come here and go to one of these motels and rent a conference room, and I'd be more than happy to sit before the camera, look into the story, and tell the truth on what happened.
Under oath?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can make that happen.
Now, some people are working on it. They're trying. They think that the next 2 weeks it'll probably happen.
If that does occur, that changes the public's let's say you are able to testify under oath these things, and it is entered into evidence into Congress, and then the JFK files come out and they also implicate George Bush as being aware or involved. What do you think that means for our country?
Excuse me. That means that a lot that people are going to be amazed at what happened. They're not going to trust the government. And the government has lied to the people for the last 150 years, let's face it.
Yeah.
And our history is nothing but a lie.
I mean, I can personally say that once you go from believing the history books, especially around these hot topic issues like JFK, 9/11, whatever else, when you go from believing it to questioning it to realizing that you can't believe any of it, you have to really take everything with a huge grain of salt. It's traumatic. It really is upsetting, and then you start thinking that you have access to forbidden knowledge and people are hiding in the bushes and whatever, and it's a whole process. So for an entire nation to go through that, maybe the silver lining to COVID, the lockdowns, all the fear mongering around that, and everything else in the last 5 to 7 years is that the population of the United States, they know something is up with this government. Even the people that are extremely liberal that think it's totally great that Anthony Fauci got a pardon for nothing that he did, but specifically between 2014 and 2025.
Well, this pardon may be a pardon for time, but it won't stop him from being subpoenaed and talking.
Right. So even if people believe that that's all completely normal, even then, I think those people still have doubts about our government. And so maybe the country is ready to learn the truth.
Well, I'm not too happy with the FBI myself. The FBI, they kidnapped me and they tortured me for about 2.5 days. They left me in a garbage dump with my hands tied behind my back with duct tape. My feet were still together with duct tape. Otherwise, I was butt-ass naked. And an elderly man and woman come out to the junkyard the next morning. They found me there in the dump yard, in garbage dump. They called the Elmhurst police and they notified them that in fact there's a body in the dump. They went out there and there's still a speck of life. They took me to Elmhurst Hospital. And they brought me back to. I called my ex-wife at that time up, had a good girl. He was my lieutenant. And he come out to the hospital and got me out of the hospital and took me home. He's sitting in my living room with a Remington Model A 70-12 gauge. It said law enforcement only. He watched over me for a week to make sure nobody got into me. I had several policemen come by the house telling me, hey, if you need any extra help, you got us. We're on your side. We got you covered. We parked a couple of cars out there. And I told him, thank you, but I'm okay. I said, George, here's, I've got pretty good control over things. And that's how it was a week before I was able to talk.
When was this?
They made me scream and yell so much when they had me and they tortured me. But that was my proudest moment. The FBI, in the bottom of the Kroll agency report, they admitted they never broke me to speak of any crime that I was involved in.
They documented their torture of you.
Yeah, it was all documented. Kroll agency spent over $100,000 investigating me before MPI put out the first confession of an assassin.
And what year was this?
1994.
No.
That's when the confession of assassin was filmed.
But not when they tortured me. That was in 78 or 79.
Wow.
Yeah, I got it all recorded. I got it all in documents. Matter of fact, we got books of the Kroll Agents Report, and it was signed off on by Thomas T. Griffin in the United States Department of Defense. And
Michael,
the bottom of page 50, it's got the little side note there. The bottom of the page, it's also where the FBI admitted that they took me and they tortured me. And they've said they felt agreement to break me to speak of any crime that I'd been involved in.
And they didn't get the ledger.
And I yelled and I screamed and I hollered and everything else. I messed all over myself and the whole thing.
What kind of torture was it?
2.5 days. I lost my voice. I went unconscious and they took me to the garbage dump.
They chained
dead.
his arms over his head, butt naked, and shoved a cattle prod where the sun don't shine and made him scream until he lost consciousness.
Wow.
Yeah, FBI, tax dollars hard at work.
And that was 78.
78 or 79. Yeah, right there, one of those 8 years. It's long ago. I forgot probably more than most people remember.
So we're nearing an hour. What else would you like to get out there?
That's about it. The only thing I've talked about has been the Kennedy assassination. Pamela wanted to write a book on my life story. I ran over 100 ops. I've got over 100 parachute jumps. And I told her to look at the bookcase. You see the set of encyclopedias? She says, what about it? I said, that would be small compared to my life story, because each Black Ops I was involved in would create a book in itself.
Did you ever I sort of interviewed a guy who worked for the Army and the CIA in the 70s, and he said that sometimes after an operation, the CIA would make him take a lot of pills that would screw with his memory and make him sleep for about 3 days.
Well, I got two years of my life missing.
So they did that to you too?
Probably, yeah.
He was at Fort Meade in the MK Ultra program, and they would have him go in there into these rooms and put all these probe things on his head, and they'd have to listen to these tapes, and he was MK Ultra extraordinaire. That there were couple years in the 60s. He just doesn't even remember them at all. And his friend Gary Marlowe, the Raven, he got married, and Jim was his best man. And Jim said, if I wasn't in these pictures, I wouldn't even believe I was there. I don't remember going to his wedding.
Wow.
Really bad stuff like that.
So what years were you in MK Ultra?
Oh, that goes into the mid-60s, yes.
So
I was in
at Brookhaven Lab when he was by Camp Hero, and they did all sorts of stuff over there to those kids that were in that in the Camp Hero super soldier program.
I had ATU at temporary duty there at Brookhaven Labs at Tamarack.
So how do you, so you're a 21-year-old kid in Chicago. They say, hey, well, you're not a kid, you're a veteran. They give you a gun and they say, you're going to take a shot. You take the shot. You guys leave without attracting a lot of attention. You go back to Chicago.
Yeah.
And you continue your role in the mafia there.
For a short time, for a short period, until they cut orders for me and sent me back to Southeast Asia.
So were you traveling back and forth to Southeast Asia, or were you there for a significant
I was back
period?
and forth. I was in and out of Southeast Asia for over 20 years.
And they were doing that Operation Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
And that was the killing
That was a
assassination program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what
Shackley was his overseer for that.
I spoke to the guy I spoke to. What he said that they would do is they would go into Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and they would do targeted assassinations of people who were politically motivated one way or the other, and
Right.
and then they would, bug out. So they were going.
He was correct on that. He was correct.
And he's the one that told me that they would take pills that would then make them forget everything they did.
Yeah. Kind of erase their memory.
So you are doing these ops in Southeast Asia after the assassination of Kennedy. Then after that, you get put into MK Ultra?
Yeah, I went to MK Ultra while I was going to Vietnam. But I did ops in the Central Hemisphere, which is Central America, the Southern Hemisphere, which is South America. Also, Eastern Europe, I was very...
Don't forget Antarctica.
Yeah, I went to Antarctica.
Crazy stuff.
That was a clean-up detail.
What happened
They
in
were
Antarctica?
making some weird clone, half-mutant people, animals, whatever, and it got out of control, and him and his rapid response team had to go take them all out.
I was in Chile at the time doing an assignment, and they put me and my team on alert and put us on an airplane, and they sent us into Antarctica.
Interesting.
We cleaned up the detail there.
What do you think about the fact that people aren't allowed to actually go into Antarctica now?
Well, government's got things they don't want people to see. People don't need to see it.
So
There's just a no-fly zone. Why don't they want people fly over the North Pole or the South Pole?
right.
You got to restrict it, airspace, no-fly zone. But they don't want people seeing it down below. They don't want them seeing the big hole in the earth. They don't want them seeing a lot of different things.
The MK Ultra stuff I'm interested in. What do you remember any of the like videos and messaging that they would play for you?
Oh, some of them I do, yeah.
Can you describe some of those?
They'd have cards in another room, and I would do OBE, which is out of body experience.
Like remote viewing.
Remote viewing, and I would go into the other room while I was unconscious. My body was my spirit or whatever inside of me. And I would come back and write down what cards I seen on the wall. And there'd be like usually 4 cards on the wall. And I'd describe all 4 cards.
So now some of that is Project Stargate.
Yeah.
Why do you think they would screw with you as because you're a valued
Because
weapon?
I had some visions while I was in NAM, like there's approaching this one village, this hamlet, and I seen the big tree in front of me, and the guy step out, and I seen him actually cutting my throat. So I stopped and I walked to the other side of the tree, and North Vietnamese was there waiting with a knife, and I killed him naturally. And there's things like that that I reported, and they sent me to the MLK, and they wanted me to see what would be done with out-of-body experience. And out-of-body experience does work, but not with me that much. I was very weak at it. But one of the guys in the program went to Lebanon at the time while he was out of his body. And he come back and he described where the hostages were at, where they were held at and everything. And gave him the address of the building. And they went there, was just like you said. They went in and they got the hostages out.
Wow. So, what do you think of the CIA now?
Well, I'm not too happy with them. I'm hoping they clean it up and they
You're
redo it.
a little smack about them?
No, I'm just saying I don't really even anymore. But they've got the politicians and bureaucrats running it now.
But the old CIA, you'll go to your death defending them.
Defending them.
George Bush Sr., the whole bit. The Nazi that.
Well, there was a population of the country that was very upset with things Kennedy was doing. Very upset. Not just about the CIA, but his policies. So I'm not justifying it, but I'm just saying that's why they would do it.
LBJ's situation was not only was he not going to be vice president, he was going to go to jail. And Hoover was going to get not fired, but, retired. And when Kennedy's head got blown up in Dealey Plaza, Johnson and Hoover just kept on going.
Ah. So, God, this is a fascinating conversation. Thank you both for taking time to meet with us.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
I know Todd is going to be very sad that he wasn't involved.
He missed it.
So we may, we may try to do this again, and let's definitely consider trying to get all of your media backed up digitally. I'll look into that and see. Do you know how many tapes that you have, Pam?
Oh, it's like one of those tubs that you get with the plastic lid on it.
Yeah.
That's a couple feet deep and all. It's just full of them.
Okay. Yeah, we should we should think about that, because history may review that as evidence and want to go back through it. Who's to say what secrets might be unveiled if you get that online and we let AI or whatever forensically go through that. I mean, we have
the Pearl Agency report, which is extremely long. Anyway, we've had that we're having that printed and put into a spiral bind. And we're probably going to sell that Parole Agency report to Thomas T. Griffin, where they signed off on it. Anyway, that'll be pretty interesting reading, and it gives a lot more detail.
It's basically the transcript of Confession of an Assassin with a bunch of notes and research material added as, like supplement information just in the transcribing of the interview that you did in 1994.
James, can I just, I'm so intrigued by this. So let's say that you know what you're going to do tomorrow, right? You know that you're scheduled to assassinate a president of the United States.
Yeah.
How do you sleep the night before?
Oh yeah, it's no different than any other job. We just know that there's assassination. It's on a Sunday afternoon. I'm sitting home. I got a call. ETA is 3 minutes. Go bag. Okay. I lived across the street from the National Guard. The helicopter used to land there, pick me up. 36 hours later, I was on the ground in the Central Hemisphere with the target in the crosshairs. You don't think about who the target is or what it is. You only think about the target and getting the job done.
Even if it is the commander-in-chief of your country.
Don't matter who it is. It's the job that's been assigned to you. You've got a target, and you remove it.
Wow.
Tell him what your most long-distance shot was and the one you're proud of.
The day that shot is not considered long distance. We got a 2-mile kill confirmed today. But back in 1969, I used an XM-21, which is a modified M14, and my best shot was 1,400 yards.
That was a Chinese general being shot from North Vietnam.
Yeah, wow. I mean, pretty much everybody in the JFK story is deceased now, correct?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, I hope that the truth comes out and a lot of this information is released in the JFK files. I'm sure the Kennedy family would like to have some clarity on what happened. And
I think the Kennedy family knows. I just think that they've kept quiet all these years.
They knew that JFK's body wasn't in Arlington. That's why Ted Kennedy sat on it when they were going to move it, because his body got shoved out to sea. It's not in Arlington underneath that eternal flame. And
Really?
Joe West was going to find out the hard way that there's no body to exhume, but they weren't going to let that court case go, all the way to the point where they're, exhuming his body, because that couldn't happen.
Well, they would have put a fake body
at the hospital.
What was your question?
Sorry, I would assume they would put a fake body in if that was the case,
Well, they could put a fake body, but I mean, anybody that did any kind of testing on it would know that's not JFK.
True. Yeah. Well, thank you both. Anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, that's about it. I'm going to lay back down.
Okay, James. Thank you. Thank you, Pamela. I really appreciate both of you for taking time. We'll add links to your books below the post, and perhaps we will be in touch again soon.
Yeah, get a copy of the book and read it if you can, because
Sure.
It's got a lot of details that you still have questions about. It's all in print.
Excellent.
The 3 books that she wrote is over 500 pages in each one.
Okay, yeah, we will check those out, and we'll also put links so that our listeners can buy them now.
And if you get a hold of Author House, they should have a media department that should send out media copies of the book.
Great. Okay.
And just ask for it, and they should send it out.
Excellent. Thank you, James, Pamela. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, sir.
You too. God bless you.
You too. Bye-bye.